Welcome to MTI Films DRS Nova. Here we are looking at our project manager where we have our master clips and our versions that we can create. And you can open this by toggling Control O on your keyboard. And from there, you can actually open up this window and collapse this window. You can also get access to it through the project manager UI through our window setup. But in this case, what we want to do initially is create a project. So under File, Create Project, we can come in here and give this project a name. Call it MTI Film DRS Nova. And then you can give it a nickname, demo. You can give it a job number if you'd like. You can actually define the number of reels you would like. It can be arbitrary, usually 5 for doing restoration work, but if you're just working on a single shot, you can keep it at 1. So in here, we now created that project up here, MTI Film, and underneath that you can see there's my demo reels, and here are the 5 that we created. So if you then right click on here, you can create a bin, or we already have a bin. You could import media. So in this case, I'm going to browse out to the directory where my media is located here, and if I double click on this, I can open up image file sequences that are required to be imported into DRS Nova. DRS Nova doesn't support movie files or ProRes files. It needs to be an image file sequence that you can bring in for it to be able to look a frame forward or a frame behind when doing its repairs. So in this case, I've imported this media. These are different versions and other files that were also in that directory. I can delete those if I don't need those and just work from the initial directory I have. I can then come in here, and initially, before I create a version, I usually want to run cut detection. This will scan through the entire movie reel or clip and determine with AI where the actual shot breaks are. It's fairly fast. You can speed it up with fewer cuts or more cuts, but typically we've trained this model to be fairly efficient. But afterwards, you will want to vet those cuts, and I'll show you how you can do that. So as it scans through this 6,211 frames, you can see it's going through and indexing these shots, and we'll bring it up onto our timeline. Once we do that, we'll want to create a version of that clip that's been now indexed. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do that by right-clicking up here and say Create New Version. So we'll give this a V1. So now my master clip now has a version. The reason we want to create versions is DRS is destructive in the sense that when you do a repair, it's going to write over the existing pixels. And if you want to preserve your original, but then make a repair and be able to go forwards and backwards, you want to create versions. And in fact, you can create versions of versions. So from that, you want to be able to go through the process of cleaning up your media in a processed way. So let's jump over into one of the projects I've already been working on, and we'll open up this particular media by clicking on it. And if I hit Control O again, I collapse it down and I see my image here, which I can frame in the center, to the right, or to the far left. You have the ability to work with multiple monitors here, and if you brought up your tool palette, you can see that you can display that palette side by side or actually move it on to another window. In this case, I'm just working with my laptop, so we'll work within this tool set to go through what makes up the DRS functions within the Nova product. So inside of DRS, we have a range of tools from low motion and high motion. What's the difference between low and high? It typically relates to the camera motion in a shot. So this particular shot is fairly static. Camera sort of locked off here, and as the people walk through, it does a slight pan to the right, and then stays static in that position as well. If the camera were moving quite fast and panning across that way, you might want to work in high versus low. And what these tools do is when you're doing a restoration cleanup, like if I were to come in here and draw a box over that, it basically looks from the past frame to the future frame and looks at the surrounding pixels to make a fix. If I reject that and come back to my original, you can see what I mean by past. This particular frame here, if I go back a frame, is a completely different shot. And if I were to just pull from the past frame, you'll see I wind up getting the black from the frame prior. So I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to either look to the future or keep it on both to get my repair. Typically, you let the software decide, and keeping it on both is where I work most of the time. However, if I have a persistent artifact that's there in multiple frames and I clean it up on one, being able to work from the past frame now of that clean frame to do the frames moving forward is very effective and efficient. So usually I let the software decide, but you have the ability to change the modes to get the best result that you'd like. In addition to low and high, again, relating more to the camera motion within a scene, we also have hard, which has the ability to do blur, edge preserving, use AI to repair things in the back. So if I leave this on blur, for instance, and we go up on something like this where you have, this information on the wall, it does a fairly nice fix in there. But if I try to use a blur on the edge here, you can see it was quite obvious where the fix was, but in the background it was blended in quite nicely. So you want to use these tools as needed, edge preserving more for going along, an edge of a scene like that, making a fix and trying to preserve it without it having pulled distortion or cause any kind of warping on the edge. And then replaces the ability to actually look within the current frame or previous frame or frames ahead and actually pull from that, almost in a cut and paste mode. So DRS has quite a few powerful tools. And as I do a cleanup here, do a restoration, if I don't like it, I can undo it. But if I do, like a repair, and I move on to the next repair and the next repair, it's accepting the ones prior. If I want to get back to those, you'll see the reject only brings back my last repair, not the previous repairs. If I actually want to do that, I can draw with my right mouse button over that region and actually see where the original values are, the same as get original values down here. And it'll actually allow me to accept those and bring those back if I wanted to restore where I was in a particular setup. Now, down here you can see with the J and K keys, I can move through the events. These are the events that we created when we actually did the shot detection. If I right click in this gray box here, I have the ability to hide those scene marks or bring those scene marks back into a particular view. And then using J and K, J goes backwards, K moves it forward across those events. Now, we had talked about vetting all those cuts, and the way you can do that is simply, move forward an event, and then using the S as in Sam key or the F as in Frank key, I can move a frame forward or a frame back. You can see going back, there is definitely a frame cut there. Same with this break. You can do this as well, going through your list. So to vet the cuts, it's as simple as, moving through this. We are adding a feature soon where you can actually visually do this in a quicker way, but right now you vet your cuts by basically advancing through the events and making sure you're on the shot break. And if there isn't a break that's wrong, you can right click on there and clear the break of that particular cut. Now, within the setup here of DRS, we have other tools that you can see that allow us to create a preferred fix. If I hold down the Z key and you get this little magnifying glass and you mouse over a particular region, you can see as I zoom in here, it's zooming in and focus to where I'm holding down that mouse key. And I just want to show again, doing a repair here, drawing a box over that. This is based on the fact that I have a rectangle setup here for the particular fix. If I wanted to, I could also do a paintbrush. And you have the brush here with the mouse button. You can resize or reduce in size. So if I wanted to come down here and paint over an artifact like that, I can do that. Paint sometimes is very useful for quickly moving through shots, but you can see in this case, I have a fix that I may not have liked as much based on the particular grain and capacity that I was looking at. So maybe the size of my paintbrush was too big. So I'm going to come in there and do a fix on that or draw over that. You can see how I can repair that using either a rectangle, or I have a lasso function where I can draw a box around it this way. You have Bezier kind of curves as well that you can create and do the shapes on that. But let's come in here and I want to create a shape just to show you some of the positions and ability you can do to fix that particular shape or change the action of the shape. So let's go back to our rectangle here, and I'm going to zoom out here. We're going to go to this particular large piece of debris here, and again, I'm going to hold down my Z key and just zoom in there. I just want to show you that. So I'm drawing a rectangle over there, and I get my fix here. I have the ability to move that fix. So as I adjust that, you can see the fix is actually moving up and exposing the actual debris underneath it. I can place that back over here, move the fix underneath the repair. So you have the ability to shift things around. And sometimes this is useful when you're trying to cover up something that is not giving you the proper fix, but you can actually grab a region and move it around. You have the ability to change the opacity of that. So, I might want to blend it in slightly, for some reason I'm actually trying to preserve part of the fix. You have the ability to change opacity. You can change color of that. And some of that depends too, if depending on your preference setups here and if you're using a lookup table. We've got these here. You can come in here and these regions here and reset these by clicking in the box. You can also click in this region here and using your mouse button increase by groups of 5 at a time or individual settings. Then you have the ability to rotate a fix. Again, here I've just drawn over partial of it just to show you that as I rotate it, I can start to bring the fix I made, which is a rectangle, and rotate it over that. And I can then move it down if I'd like to, or cross over that spot. So you have the capability to change your borders, the rotation of your fix, the color from the brightness to saturation, red, green, blue. You have also the ability to add grain. And the grain can come from presets from our grain tool module. Using those presets, you can load up to 2 different presets and then blend those in, which sometimes is very useful on graining material. So DRS Nova has quite a few tools built into it. These are manual tools, and typically I'm not starting on a shot like this where I have quite a bit of debris floating around and trying to manually clean it up. Typically, I'm going to look at this, analyze it, and determine I might need to first actually do a stabilization pass, or I might actually need to do a deflicker, which I actually had done on both of these shots. And then I might want to do my debris tool next to actually what we call shine, to actually clean up this fine debris and small little scratches, which would take too long to manually repair. And in doing that, you can combine these tools in such a way using a process decision list, or just manually going through these procedurals first, analyzing it, doing a camera motion analysis. This actually allows me to determine the speed of the camera and the motion of the camera. From there, again, I might want to run a stabilization pass based on using that camera motion data. From there, I might want to actually then use my deflicker tool to actually, again, come in and do a zonal using that camera motion data before I actually go into my debris tool, where I would, again, I could use that motion analysis information, or I could, simply enable the filters for white debris and black debris and process those. And in doing so, you can get really good results. Let's take a look at, this particular image here after we had it cleaned up here. So I'm going to go back to our DRS module. I'm going to hide this window with Shift L. I can actually play this particular clip without the viewer on top. And let's just loop that. So now you can see I have a stable image. The deflicker is gone. Most of the dirt and debris has been removed, but I've been able to preserve the highlights and reflections on the jacket and on this fishing pole, all using the DRS tool combined with our other functions inside of DRS Nova.